Welcome to the Healing Grove podcast. I'm Dr. Kristen Ryman, an integrative holistic family physician, author of Life After Lyme, and host in this virtual space of learning, healing, and growing. I believe humans are like trees, and our physical limb is only one of many. Health on all limbs of the tree, emotional, conceptual, social, spiritual, is absolutely required for the whole tree that is you to be vibrantly well. I created the Healing Grove podcast as a place to showcase some of the world's best integrative and holistic medicine, to expose you to transformative tools and mindset shifts for all limbs of your tree. I hope you enjoy our conversation in the Healing Grove today as much as I enjoyed having it.
And welcome back, everyone, to the Healing Grove podcast. I'm so excited today to introduce you to my friend, Adrienne Nolan-Smith. Hi, Adrienne.
Hi, Kristen. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so happy to see you.
Oh my gosh, totally. It's been way too long. So Adrienne received her BA from Johns Hopkins University and an MBA from the Kellogg School of Business, right?
Kellogg School of Management at
Northwestern. Thanks. She spent 3 years after that working in hospitals, helping them build programs for folks suffering from chronic disease, and then became a board-certified patient advocate. So we're going to learn a little bit today about what a board-certified patient advocate is and how to find one if you need one. And her focus was on holistic health and healing. She went on to found Well-Be, where she now puts all that knowledge, passion, and advocacy to work for people struggling to heal from complex chronic mystery illnesses and wanting to stay vibrantly, holistically well. In fact, that's how we first met, right? Back in, was it 2020, 2021?
Gosh, maybe even before. Yeah. I
feel like beginnings, it was like simmerings of pandemic time, I think.
Yes, I think maybe right around 2020. Yep. 5 years ago. Wow.
When she reached out to me on behalf of a few clients who were looking for a doctor with an integrative functional medicine background, because that's part of what a board certified patient advocate does, right? Is connect people to other providers who can help them depending on what they need. So she also hosts the Get Well-Be podcast and YouTube show, where she shares research along with her community, and her articles, newsletters, and social media all do the same. And I, by the way, took a deep dive down your Instagram channel today. It was awesome. I'm going to be really sharing that out widely now that I know kind of what you're doing there. I didn't even know you had a channel until today. So like many people who visit us on the Healing Grove podcast, my friend Adrienne found her way to this path through her own personal health challenges, which we're going to learn about, and some family health issues. So why don't we just start there, Adrienne, with your story of how you got to be where you are today?
Sure. So, there's a couple chapters of my health journey, I would say. I've been very blessed in that nothing was super debilitating. I was diagnosed because my younger brother was diagnosed with Lyme disease when I was about 11. And he was 8, and he was very sick. And it was one of those like nobody knew what was going on thing. And then I was very tired, as way more tired than an 11-year-old should be. And my mom sort of said to the doctor, well, if he's got this, maybe that's what's going on with her too. And I was, and both of us had been, bitten way before. They don't know when. And so there was really very little antibiotics could do at that point. We tried them, but neither of us were healed from that. So we started on a crazy journey of different therapies, and my mom was a fearless warrior for her. I mean, she fought for every wacky thing you could think of that might work. And, today, this was sort of pre-internet, right? In the 90s. And after about 2 years of a variety of therapies, I was healed, and my younger brother took longer, but he's okay now too. And fast forward so that was kind of my introduction to like lots of different kinds of practitioners and therapies, and obviously being chronically not feeling well as a kid. And then fast forward to college, I got to college and I had amenorrhea. So a couple months after I got to college in Baltimore at Johns Hopkins, which is just the medical term for you've lost your period, sort of a phantom, like, where did it go? And it had been normal since I was 12 years old and coming every month. And I'd always had, bad cramps, but I didn't really think that was, I know it's common, not normal, right, to have cramps. But I didn't think anything of that. And I saw all these conventional doctors, and nobody could actually tell me why I had lost my period or find anything that was wrong with me. And I ended up seeing more of a naturopathic doctor after about a year and a half of not having it. And she really helped me to understand the role of thyroid. So she diagnosed me with Hashimoto's, but also in gut health and microbial imbalances. And she had me taking, antiviral, anti-parasitic, antibacterial herbs, and, taking a lot of supplements and changing my diet dramatically. And all of that helped so much. About 6 months of doing that with her, my period came back and has been, completely normal ever since, coming every month, except of course, when I had 2 babies. But besides that, it was really eye-opening to me because I had seen so many doctors at Hopkins and these top doctors in New York City where I'm from. And none of them not only tried at all to figure out how to get my regular period back. There was just this sense of like, I don't know, but here's a birth control pill. Maybe it'll come back with that. And I was like, I even entertained that. I think I took it for 3 months because they said it would sort of like jumpstart my body to produce a normal period. It did not. But it was just shocking to me how little interest they had in actually understanding the root cause of this health issue and how effective it was when I actually just started taking these herbs and supplements and changing my diet, and voila. So that was kind of my second major like aha moment with my health. But it also launched my journey with Hashimoto's, which I still have, I'm sort of trying to get to the bottom of, and I've made some great progress in the last couple months with trying to understand the root causes of that, but it's been a long time. And then lastly, my mother was diagnosed with schizoaffective disorder and had like a manic breakdown basically, and started to have, delusions and psychosis when I was graduating from college. And it was a absolutely horrendous 3-year journey, which led me to various mental hospitals all over the Northeast, where she was an inpatient and, they're taking away her legal rights, and she had to have a guardian, and sort of she was forced medicated with things that were so debilitating. I mean, drooling, shaking, couldn't sleep. And then they'd give her the medication for sleeping because she couldn't sleep. And then she'd have to take a different medication for all the tremors and the shaking, which then led to all these other things. And she was just like a total zombie. And I remember thinking, this is not really a solution at all. This is just a different set of terrible circumstances. Like she's not able to, she's super high functioning. She was in the first class of women at Johns Hopkins, where I went, and then at the Columbia Business School, and, was very mentally with it, but she was just reduced to a total like vegetable. And she was about around 60 years old. So she ended up taking her life when she was 61. I think she just felt like there was no way out of this drug-induced stupor that she was in. I was 25. It was, arguably the hardest thing I've ever gone through. I still miss her terribly.
Adrienne, let me just pause for 1 second. I'm so sorry to hear that happened to your mom. I'm so sorry for your loss.
Thank you. It's been a long time. I'm turning 40 this year, so I can talk about it super matter-of-factly because it's really, time is very healing, I will say. But it also was very timely in the sense that when she died, it was a few days before Christmas, and my applications, I was applying to business school. I was working at IBM at the time, and I didn't really know exactly why I wanted to go, but like everybody in my group at IBM had gone to business school, and I was like, okay, I guess I'll do that. And then I had this really intense experience as I was applying, and I sort of ripped up what I had written And it all kind of became very clear in my mind that if I got in, I was meant to go and work on trying to fix this incredibly broken system. The mental health care system is absolutely horrible, but just in general, looking at her whole health history before this all happened with her mental health, there were so many clues, there were so many opportunities to see that she had horrible gut health, that she had thyroid issues, that she had a lot of trauma from childhood that hadn't been worked through. And, 50 something years of not dealing with those bad microbes in your gut and these thyroid issues and trauma, it compounds to it kind of like, we talk about the bucket running over with the number of toxins in everybody's products and in the environment, and then becoming chronic disease. Like that's kind of what happened. And it manifested in this brain disease rather than like a diabetes or something. And I remember thinking, like, if anybody had tried to understand the root cause of her health issues before, she may not have ever had that bucket run over, but nobody did really. Mm-hmm. And I don't think she ever heard the term gut health, I don't know if she understood how bidirectional her mental health was with the state of her gut microbiome. And even like we had 2 cats, and it was years later, once I had started Wellbe, that I learned about toxoplasmosis and the connection to psychosis and schizophrenia. And schizoaffective disorder, by the way, is just like, the cousin of schizophrenia, very, very similar.
Sort of schizophrenia light.
Yeah, exactly. It's kind of they had described it, the doctors had described it to me as like a combination of bipolar and schizophrenia or something.
And I'm also just thinking back to how she was so on point and ahead of her time when it came to you guys, to you and your brother. Like she was thinking out of the box. She was like a warrior. She was a bulldog. She was like sniffing out every possible clue. And I don't even know what she found, but clearly it was like after, a lot of research that wasn't easy to find and a lot of just pushing past obstacles and paradigms that said, oh, she's, they're just tired or they're just lazy or it's just Lyme disease, treat it with antibiotics and you'll be fine. Like, speaking of Lyme, what about Lyme for her? I mean, 2 of her kids had Lyme.
Completely could have had Lyme as well. I would love to know all the things that would have been found had they actually been able to find them in her health, in her body when she died, as far as all these microbes. I am sure that we spent the summers growing up in Lyme, Connecticut, literally where it started. So all of us, had it. So I am sure that she did too. But I know she definitely had thyroid issues and for sure gut problems, a lot of digestive problems. And so with all of that, and knowing that she had several kind of ACEs as far as childhood trauma things, it's just a typical case, right, of like all these things coming together and manifesting in some very debilitating chronic illness later in life. For some women in their 50s and 60s, that ends up being breast cancer, or, MS, lupus, like a lot of these autoimmune conditions tend to be women, but also mental illness. So it was awful. And she felt, I think, like a prisoner in her own mind, because one thing the medication did provide was clarity, an end to the voices and the whatever that she was experiencing. And she'd have these, once she got some clarity from the drugs, intense shame and like shock and like, what? Like I did that. I said that, where I went there. I really like, it was really an out of body thing. And it was wild to try to, and really that was my first experience also being kind of a patient advocate, because I was trying to navigate her in this crazy world of both conventional healthcare, because when she would go off the drugs, a lot of the mania would come back. So I sort of had to stay in this world too with her and try to get her to people that might be able to really heal her body. And the doctors in the conventional system had zero interest in healing anything. It was just like how to stop the symptoms. And I never, unfortunately, got the person or the more root cause driven medicine for her. But I've now dedicated my life to that work and helping others to navigate these different situations. Some people that I've worked with that have then worked with you don't really know exactly what's going on, and have like a variety of symptoms, but can't quite figure out how they all come together or what's behind them. Mystery illness, I guess you can call. And then others, they have a diagnosis, whether it's Lyme or lupus or cancer, and they're trying to understand how to really heal it rather than just, manage it with drugs. So it's it's a variety. But I used my opportunity in business school, because I did end up getting in and going, to like try to build this and understand this world. And I almost launched Wellbe when I graduated, which was in 2013. And then I decided, you know what? I think I know everything that's wrong with the conventional system, but I would rather know for sure. So I ended up working within it. I felt very stealthy because I knew I was not part of it.
Could they tell you were kind of like the skeptic who was sort of scratching your head, but like kind of had the inner knowing of like, this place is broken?
Yes, certainly some of my bosses knew what I had been working on in business school, and that I fundamentally did not agree with, any healthcare system that wasn't interested in healing as a first priority. Like, I just don't understand how where we are with our healthcare system today, but that's how it is. Just manage indefinitely with drugs and procedures, and everybody collects their piece of that pie and makes a lot of money off of everybody being sick. And nobody, has been interested to know what's causing a lot of these crazy chronic disease epidemics.
So I'm going to pause you right there, because I remember when we all still were curious and we would ask questions. And I'm talking about as a trainee, as a medical student, and even as a resident, there were people among me, and I was always asking questions. And obviously that's why I'm doing something very different, right? But even in my second and third year of residency, there would be other residents who would be asking our attendings for more mechanisms of action. Help us understand what this disease is actually really coming from, because there's a temptation with so much information to just quickly memorize the pattern, memorize what the next treatment option is, and usually it's a drug or an intervention, and then move on to the next thing, because there's just so much information. And of course, it's skewed towards interventions like drugs, because our medical education is subsidized by the pharmaceutical industry. I mean, they are coming in, giving us free samples. They are feeding us food. They are creating opportunities for learning every week in morning report and in grand rounds, where they're of course bringing us lots of food and giving us a little spiel at the beginning about the latest and greatest drug. And it's hard when you're in that bubble to know that that's not the whole story, or to really understand where bias is. And even if there's bias, it's a free lunch, but no, there's no such thing as a free lunch, it's still what you're learning as the sort of options for treatment. So I think there is curiosity, and I think ultimately it just gets squashed out of a lot of people, because it's just not business as usual, and it doesn't get you to the end of the day, which is passing your boards, getting to practice, helping patients, doing the thing that's in the guidelines, which of course, if you don't do, you get dinged for. Sorry, I've just gone on a rant, but that's I want to both defend and acknowledge that you're right. There's not a search for fundamentally what's going on with people so you can fix the root, because that's not what our training is about.
Totally. And I, having gone to Johns Hopkins, in my sorority family tree, I think like 5 generations of sorority family, right? I'm the only non-doctor. They've all gone to medical school, wonderful women who really care deeply about their patients. Pediatric neurologists on the front line and like the ICU and all of that. And so I can see, because these are people I love dearly, that they are good people who would like to understand how to actually heal somebody. But it is so challenging because they're seeing so many people, and because the system was set up to not even really acknowledge it or help them in any way to do that, or give them the tools or the training like you talked about, or the time. Big piece is the time to really investigate the way that you've been able to do with your patients. And so on it goes, turning, and without time for them to stop and think, did I actually get anybody better, or I'm just making sure they don't get worse, I guess. And so, right, I don't really think of it as like, oh, well, the whole medical system is full of just doctors who don't care. No, I really think it's more the system that they get indoctrinated into when they start medical school, all the way through residency and, working with patients after that, doesn't allow for really that curiosity. It, like you said, it just gets squashed. There's just too much churn, and it's just much easier. It's sort of lazy medicine, I think, but it's so much easier to just like hand somebody a script than it is to really like dig in and get in deep about what's going on with them.
Well, I'm gonna agree that it's easier sort of from a time perspective and sort of physically easier just to write a script than to sit down and take time. But I would say the moral injury that comes from practicing medicine in that way, if you know there's another way, or even if you sense there's a better way. Like, I think a lot of doctors sense there's a better way. I mean, patients ask them about nutrition and they realize they don't know anything about nutrition.
Right. Oh, I feel so badly that doctors are not given that training, because that they must feel very ill-equipped when they've got a food-based condition, patient, like a diabetes patient, and they're like, I'd have to just refer them to somebody else really to talk through.
Right.
What
They refer them to a dietitian, and the dietitian world is still based on a carb-based model.
Yes.
So they're
still extremely corrupted. Yes.
They're still going to learn how to eat carbs and then medicate themselves to manage the effects of those carbs, without being told by anyone in the process that actually, if you remove carbs, if you move yourself to a ketogenic lifestyle, and you relieve your body of the ups and downs in blood sugar, because you're not putting sugar in your body and blood, you can lose your diagnosis of diabetes type 2.
Yes.
Whoever tells them that?
Yes. I was working with somebody who reversed their type 2 diabetes in just a few months, 2 months, I think.
Yeah.
Just 2 months of diet change, gone.
Yeah.
Wild. But it's been a very eye-opening. And so because you asked me about this before, but when I finally did leave my job working with hospitals, and took a big, entrepreneurial leap to founding the WellBe platform, there was not even a patient advocacy board certification yet, because I left in 2017 to start my platform. And then in 2018 was the first class, and I read about it and I thought, gosh, I now know so much about the conventional healthcare system from working with hospitals for 3 years, and just, brain full of all these codes and systems and whatever. And I thought, okay, if I dump all of that into this exam, I could pass it because I know a lot now. And what if I used that to help people in a totally different way than they think I'm going to help people? And so that's what I did. And I had to go take the exam somewhere like, I don't even, like some big classroom near Penn Station in New York. It's like a 3-hour exam, and passed. And then started to work with people privately as an advocate, but really with this focus on helping them access, providers like you and holistic treatments, and doing the research with them, for them, on all of those different options, and then really holding their hand through the process, because it's so incredibly overwhelming to be trying to heal your body and be researching and project managing, and potentially also a mother, taking care of children, also potentially working a regular job. I mean, I think a lot of people who are chronically ill just don't have the time to really do all of that. And so they just putter along. That's what I used it for. And I will say the majority of patient advocates, because I still have to do, I'm sure like you, to keep your medical license, a lot of continuing education and be recertified every 3 years, are either employed by hospitals, or if they're in private practice, they're really working with people who are in the system, right? In the conventional system, like that's it. They're just navigating them through the insurance nightmares and treatment nightmares, and getting them to skilled nursing facilities after the hospital that they want, all that, with absolutely no thought that like they could help them actually figure out being rid of all this. Is just like how to manage the chaos of being in the system.
So how many patient advocates would you say, roughly guesstimating, are doing what you're doing, which is this hybrid approach of like, you know, all about how to navigate the broken healthcare system that is hospitals and sort of outpatient care and an insurance model, but you also know all about root cause healing and gut health and holistic doctors and how to help people connect with them. Who else is doing this?
Kristen, I don't know about anybody else that's doing it that way. I've never heard of anybody else doing it that way. I would love to know, because sometimes, like when I've been having babies, I can't work with people and people are on, you know, my wait list and they're asking me for help right away. And I wish I had somebody else to send them to that does this work this way, but I don't. I only know of, you know, I'm part of like a professional advocacy group because of I take their courses when I need continuing education, but all of them are really focused on just the conventional system. So yeah, I don't know of anybody doing it the way I'm doing it.
Okay, well, in that case, let's focus on you. You describe yourself on your website, I love it, as a health investigator / lawyer / confidant / coach / assistant, all wrapped together in one big role. So tell us like some of the main bullets of what people come to you for and what you're able to accomplish together.
So usually it's one of two things, right? Like somebody has a diagnosis and they're like, you know, I've been pinballed around. I've seen 12 doctors. Like, I don't want to be on drugs. I want to be done with this. I want to heal my body. Can you help me do that? I don't know who to see. Or they've already seen a lot of integrative functional doctors and haven't gotten the success they want. And they're like, I don't want to spend more money on this unless, you know, I really feel like I can get to the right person. And so I cut down, you know, I'd like to think that I read a statistic once, it was like the average person might see like 12 to 14 doctors before they can actually get a real root cause or really heal whatever it is going on. And I'd like to think that, you know, when I work with people, I cut that number down drastically, like maybe it's 1, maybe 2, but I get them to people I feel really confident want to get to the root cause of these issues and can. So that's one way that people get to me when they have a real diagnosis. Now, I will say with my cancer clients, you know, my goal is always remission, but you know, sometimes I also have to help them navigate the process of like finding the least invasive pancreatic cancer surgeon if they've got to have, you know, piece of the tumor removed too, in addition to all the stuff they should be doing with their diet and herbs and stuff. So that one tends to be more conventional, but certainly like my Lyme clients, I'm like, you know, let's go right to the stuff that I know can work, the stuff that you use and that I've experienced and, you know, herbs and all the other therapies that are out there. And then other people are just like, I have this collection of symptoms. I don't feel well. I don't know what's going on. Everybody I go to tells me a different thing, or they've gotten a conventional diagnosis like, you know, irritable bowel syndrome. And I love that one because I'm like, well, what is irritating your bowel? It's like a joke to me, that term, because it's so unhelpful to getting it fixed. Or like fibromyalgia literally means like pain everywhere. No sense of why it's happening, just like pain everywhere. Or even my autoimmune thyroid condition, Hashimoto's, is just named after the guy who discovered it, right? Like zero help into like, why would your own body attack your thyroid? Like, why would that happen? So it's usually one of those two things. And the investigator piece, you know, certainly is on the people that are really like the mystery. I do a lot of investigation. I try to understand all the lab work they've already had done, all the things they're telling me about symptoms, and then like, okay, what haven't we thought of? And then usually try to help whatever doctor we go to fast forward to that part so they don't have to do that whole huge process. Because I'm like, all right, well, we already have a sense of here's what they've done. I can't believe how many very good doctors I even send all the lab work to, and they don't really look through all of it before we have our first meeting. And it's obviously because they're very time crunched, but I find things and I point them out in lab work to any provider we start working with, because I'm like, you never know if they're going to miss this. I don't want to assume that they're going to find it. I found it. Let's talk about it, So that's great. That I think that's helped people a lot to cut down on time and on testing, because it's like if we can provide something that's really helpful before they start deciding what they need to do, it's like, okay, well, then we don't need to do that right now. You have a stool test from 6 months ago that shows us X, Y, and Z. Like, let's just start treating that. So yeah. And then the personal assistant part is like, I have to like call doctor's offices, which is not my favorite part of my job. But someone's got to do it. And I think when you're healing, you feel very emotionally burdened by everything that you might have to do related to this. And so some people simply don't get better because it's too emotionally exhausting to call a bunch of doctor's offices and ask questions and play phone tag. It's very annoying. And so I'm like, I'll take on that annoying part. You just worry about, getting better. Or doing the hard work of really healing something holistically, because as you know, it's an inside job. Like, you really can't heal unless you're doing it all day, every day. And so I'm like, the administrative BS doesn't need to be you. But eating properly does need to be you. So sleeping properly does need to be you. Like, you do that stuff. So yeah, that's why I say I'm sort of investigator, personal assistant, and then it just stinks. The entire experience is so lonely, so debilitating. And having somebody going through it with you who's like, I got you, I'm here. I'm not giving up on you because like one thing didn't work out that we tried, like we're going to keep going. And that's usually why people work with me for several months, because it's a long process to really heal. And there's a lot of bumps in the road. And so if it's too short, people get super discouraged by a bump in the road. So I am always like, no, this is normal. Like it's like starting a business, like lots of problems, just keep going. Yeah. So that's the strange job I've found myself in, but it's very fulfilling. And I get to know so many wonderful providers like yourself in the process, because I usually try to have, the calls and work with this person and my client. And so that's really rewarding, because like I just have made so many wonderful friendships in the process. So yeah.
I'll just say from my perspective, it's so helpful that you are that involved, coming to the Zoom calls, coming to the visits, taking notes, asking good questions, keeping everyone on track. It's like, it's such a gift. I'm wondering if providers ever hire you to sort of be in their back pocket and doing all the sort of, looking over the labs in advance of them seeing and doing all the things you're doing for patients, and then to do that in collaboration. I wonder if anyone has reached out to you and said, will you just kind of live in my brain, Adrienne?
No, most providers I work with, and you're one of the people I've gone back to the most, I think, because I just love your tenacity with the root cause. Like you're really determined to figure it out. You do not practice lazy medicine in any way. So, but the ones, people that haven't, if I go to a provider that I haven't worked with before, also licensing and state law and stuff plays a role, right? I can't always have the doc. I sometimes have to find a doctor in like Tennessee. I don't know that many doctors in Tennessee for somebody that is a client who's living in Tennessee. So there's, a piece of it that's like that. I think telehealth, because of COVID, has helped that a lot. It's not just state, dependent anymore, but there's still quite a bit of regulation. So you do sometimes have to do that. So sometimes I'm working with a brand new doctor with a client, and they're like, what? They're not that into the idea that I am kind of keeping very close track, asking a lot of annoying questions, perhaps not being as deferential as they are used to patients being.
Well, holding them accountable,
bothering them incessantly when they're taking too long on things, finding things which might be a little bit embarrassing that they missed. So yeah, overall, I don't think that many doctors love me. But
Well, I mean, I think doctors with fragile egos probably hate you, and the rest of us are delighted to have an extra pair of eyes on all of it because it's so complex, right? There's so many pieces, especially someone who, doesn't have the same kind of skin in the game. I think everyone has the skin in the game, right? Like patients certainly the most, and I think they're also usually the least able to kind of be at full capacity when they're sick, right? Because they're sick.
Yes.
A lot of my patients' brains aren't working intermittently. When I was sick with Lyme, my brain wasn't working either. So I get it, but it means you need an advocate. It means you need someone on your healing team who's going to like do the thinking for you sometimes.
Yeah. And also just the keeping going. Like, I think, I mean, the statistics around people that like co-founders of businesses that have each other's back, going through all the really bumpy stuff in the beginning, but continuing to go, are so much more successful than like the sole founder who gets very disillusioned and gives up early when things start to get hard. And I find that with the client relationship too. It's like, not only is it helpful to have like that extra set of eyes, as you were talking about it, and the thinking when they can't think too clearly for themselves, if they, especially brain fog, Lyme and a lot of these illnesses have that. But separately, it's like they will try something that doesn't really work for them, or they will be really hopeful about a new doctor who doesn't prove to be as great as they thought, or all of these things, or they'll have a flare, a really bad setback, and they get so discouraged. And that's where like having this partner to be like, nope, we're like going forward, is really helpful.
Yeah, we all need someone like that in our corner. So we were talking before the call, and you said we're just about to open to a few new patients, a few new clients, right, to work with and be an advocate for. I'm sure those few people have already fallen in love with you and are now digging on your website, trying to figure out how to get on your short list of who can come work with you. What about for people who may not be ready for that level of commitment or engagement, or just can't get in because you're so few and far between, and want other ways to learn what you're teaching, sort of foundational things that everybody needs?
Yeah. So I will say that so much of health and healing, again, I said it before, is an inside job. And there's parts of it that are super, that are across the board important, like nailing sleep. Your body cannot heal if you're not sleeping well. Or you will set yourself up for future disease if you're not sleeping well, if you don't already have something. Detoxifying your daily life, your products, your home, the food that you eat, like getting all that crap out and replacing it with stuff that actually has nutrients or isn't full of harmful chemicals, is such an important piece of this. And you don't need to be working with a patient advocate to do all of that. Some people find it very overwhelming and burdensome to go through that process. So they don't, but that's why I've created some like on-demand programs on my site that take people through detoxifying their home and daily habits, or nailing sleep, getting that really right with their sleep hygiene and their bedroom environment, and understanding the root causes of sleep troubles. And even like I actually teach a patient advocate course also on my site that you can get 8 continuing education credits for people that aren't advocates and maybe don't want to go through the whole board certification process, but who are nurses interested in having this additional training. So it's like a holistic patient advocate program, basically everything I do with people, but for professionals. And so that's been a great program. I've really enjoyed taking some professionals through that. I've even had like some, nurses and care coordinators like on the floor of their hospital at night, like on the Zoom with me on their shift, being like, I got to get out of this system. Like I'm gonna learn how to, help people in a different way. So that's always very rewarding, but that's not really for, let's say, patients or for people with health challenges. But I would say, yeah, going through some of those programs and really detoxifying yourself is the first step to healing your body. I would say that my non-toxic product database, which is something I absolutely love and use myself every single day, is probably like the least expensive, most helpful thing that requires zero work. If everyone's like, I don't want to have to go through a program, well, this is zero work saves people a lot of time. It's like 2,500 non-toxic products that I've rated, vetted. They have all the different, made safe score and the EWG score and the Think Dirty score, and the link, like usually maybe it's Amazon or something like a big online retailer to order it. And that is all like organized into categories. So I basically don't buy anything for my children or my house or myself without going there first and being like, okay, I need, 100% organic cotton, like pajamas for my kids. Like I go find it on the database, or, non-toxic sippy cups for the baby and all of that. Like it's all there. So that has been great for my life as a busy mom, but I know a lot of people love that. And that's very like, easy as far as dipping your toe into this world.
Low-hanging fruit. I would call that low-hanging fruit. Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for doing all of that, putting all that stuff together for us. I also just want to highlight that your website has a lot of interesting information, well-researched, well-written blogs. You also have your podcast and your newsletter. So there are a lot of ways for people to kind of start to get, regular downloads of your wisdom and your efforts.
So many interviews and so much research over the years that I've been doing this. I think the podcast has like 140 or 150 episodes, many of which are interviews with incredible doctors and experts like yourself on different topics. And I do a lot of like health news and research breakdowns, because there's actually so many studies that people do not realize proving all the stuff we talk about with holistic health. Like there's this myth, I think, that like research and science sits over with the conventional system and just proves their philosophies. And then we're like in this strange, wacky, Wild West with like, what, nothing like that. And it's totally not true. There's tons of research showing this side too. And so I love to highlight it, because I love to show these connections are being studied and that there's so much evidence to prove that we're in a chronic disease epidemic, and that our diet and lifestyles and environments are really driving it, and that magical time-tested things like herbs are highly effective for conditions like chronic Lyme and for autoimmune conditions and all these other things, or, different therapies that are being studied that people thought were just like woo-woo and wacky. I'm like, no, great evidence. So yeah, I love research. When, I don't do as much as I'd like today, because I've got these 2 little kiddos that are very young. But I'm a research junkie for sure.
Amazing. So what haven't we talked about, Adrienne, that you want to make sure we highlight or just mention before we finish talking to this group of wellness seekers?
Gosh, we have covered a lot of topics. I think, I've probably made it sound like it's a very laborious process to get well, but actually it's been so invigorating, I think, to go through the different stages of health things that I've experienced. And I really believe that everything happens for a reason and helps you to become a more enlightened version of yourself. And so I'd like to say to anybody that's maybe feeling a little bit of bummed out or like self-pity about having a health issue, why me, this stinks, like I wish I didn't have to deal with this, that it's there for a reason, and it's going to help you to learn about this world, which now you and I have learned about, and to become a more enlightened version and healthier version. And if you then have children, your children and their children will be more enlightened and healthier and truth seeking. And that's just a beautiful thing. So, I want to talk about that part of getting well, because it can be so transformational and so beautiful. And where you end up, you may never have gotten to, as far as what you learn and how you live and the future health of generations, if you hadn't had some health issue, and or whether it's your family member or yourself. And so there's light in this. It's not all hard and darkness.
Yeah, no, when it gets to the inside job that you were talking about, it really is. It's an inside job that at the other side of it, you're changed from the inside out, and it's always for the better.
Yeah. And there's no way to really physically heal entirely some condition or symptom without also some emotional healing. And so that's just like an added bonus, because you come out of it like, oh, I fixed that period issue, for example, but also I learned how to like speak up for myself and realize my family, my childhood was kind of like messed up. And so I process a lot of that. And all the different things that come with just like spiritual and emotional growth, you will definitely go through that as you physically heal. And I think that's so wonderful. I just love every time I make some kind of like emotional, spiritual leap, I'm like, that's great.
Yeah, it's such a good reminder that we're sick, not always on the physical limb by itself, right? There's other limbs of our tree that are also impacted. And when you heal, you're healing your whole tree.
Yeah, yes, absolutely. And especially women. I mean, there's so much research around, I think, autoimmune conditions and a presence of childhood issues, unprocessed trauma, especially in women. And it's because I think women take on such a burden, like all the emotional baggage of everybody kind of ends up falling on them, or they take it on, or a combination. And so without that processing, it almost acts like sludge, and enough sludge leads to disease. And so that's great when you start the healing process and you just like say no to the sludge, get it out. That's very exciting.
Do you find, one last question, because you're so fascinating, do you find, having lived through your own healing journeys, you, as a result of those learnings and that change, do you just set better boundaries around the sludge moving forward?
Yeah, I think, yes, I think that I recognize that I need to process, and I'm always trying to like understand and do that for myself. I've done some, EMDR therapy and talk therapy and other things like that to help me process. And also that as I now have more children and family members and things that come up and whatever, I sort of have set like I can only take on so much, like, to protect my physical health too. And that's been a real change, because I think I felt like I had to take on everybody's stuff when I was younger.
Yeah, a lot of us did and still do. So
Yeah.
thank you for that. Thank you for sharing that learning with us. And thanks for all of it. You're doing such great work, Adrienne. I really appreciate your time and your willingness to share what you're up to, and also give people some ideas about how to move forward with their own health, possibly with an advocate.
Yeah, I'm happy to. I love talking to you anyway. This was just a joy for me to get to talk to you, but also to share everything that's happened in my life and how I got to where I am today.
Cool.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Healing Grove podcast. If you liked it, please be sure to like and subscribe. And if you want to deepen your experience further, consider grabbing a copy of the Healing Grove Playbook. With journal prompts for this podcast and 41 others, it's the perfect place to record your learnings, keep track of the tools you explore, and reflect on your own experience. Finally, it's important to mention that even though I am a doctor, nothing you hear on this podcast, whether from myself or my guests, constitutes medical advice. Any intervention you try should always be discussed with and supervised by a trusted member of your own healing team. Thanks for listening, and see you next time in the Healing Grove.